Hello, everybody. Welcome back this afternoon to Austin Startup Week's Future of Work track. My name is Gavin Gillas, and I'm excited to be your host today. This afternoon, we have a pretty jam-packed schedule for Future of Work, and I'm really excited to share with you what we're doing here. Never have we been more obsessed with what the future will hold than this year in 2020. Everything has been changed, both home life, health, and the workplace. And so understanding that comprehensive view of what's going on, both from a macro and personal perspective, is important as you as leaders and you as community members make your plans and interface with your teams and set up your strategy for the next year. And so that's what I'm hoping to accomplish today, is provide these incredible speakers and these wonderful panelists, as well as our startups that we'll be showcasing today, a chance to share their visions for the future of work, their tips and tricks, and really been bolstered today by what we saw this morning. I was privileged to also host the work from home track and touched on very similar themes around burnout and health concerns and communications and really refactoring and rebuilding your workflows for what's happening this year. A bit of my background here in terms of Austin Startup Week. I've been involved in startups for quite a while. My dad was an entrepreneur, and we had an electric car company. And I'm old enough that it was pre-Tesla and not cool to have an electric car. They called them glorified golf carts and things like that. So I grew up as a preteen and teenager going to trade shows with my dad and his company. We had an electric race car, and I built an electric scooter for a state science fair. And entrepreneurship was really hard, like for my dad and for our family, and financially it never worked out. So when I made decisions around what I wanted to do for a career in college, I chose to pick a very safe route. I got a business degree and then went to law school and completed law school. And thought I could get away with never being in a startup. But it turns out sometimes startups are in your blood, and I couldn't get away from it. So after graduating from law school and accumulating a crushing amount of student debt, my brother called me up and he said, "Hey, there is this thing called a hackathon, and it's at Nike. He was working at Nike. It's at Microsoft, and we lived in Portland, Oregon, and we hopped in the car and we drove 3 hours up the road to Seattle, Washington, to go to Microsoft HQ and spend a weekend in a room with folks that were all trying to start startups. And there was about 400 people there. And it was one of the first startup weekends ever. And it was really, really hard, especially someone who just finished all this law school training. I had no sense of software or how apps were built or how technology was brought to market. And it was a great front row seat. And since then, and we also lost the hackathon. I mean, we didn't even place. We had a good big team, but we couldn't really articulate our vision well. So there was a lot to learn from the quick failure you get from a weekend hackathon. And so I met some of the Startup Week organizers, did a bunch of Startup Weekend events for over a decade. And I moved here to Austin about 8 years ago. And the first thing I did when I moved to town was to put on a hackathon to help meet folks and to help hire and retain team members for my startup. And so for the past 8 years, I've been building companies here in Austin. The company I moved here for was a company called the Magazine Channel. And I worked with publishers to digitize content and to prepare them for this transition to a fully digital workflow. So I had clients like Condé Nast and Hearst, National Geographic, and others. And I sold that company in 2016. And now I work as a mentor and advisor for various groups. I mentor here at Capital Factory. I mentor at Galvanize and Diving. I just finished 3 years as an entrepreneur in residence at UT Austin. And my day job is a startup studio. It's a corporate venture studio called YGC. And YGC is focused on something that, has been a pain point for me and the companies I've worked with for a long time, which is you get a startup up to a certain stage, then it's really hard to go into enterprises and work with big companies. And likewise, as I've been working with big companies for several years and have been funded by several of the largest companies in the world, they have a hard time with external innovation, integrating startups into their culture, fostering internal innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to work in the intersection of those things, the startup practices and culture, as well as the corporate scale and ability to really drive strong intellectual property and innovations. And so we created YGC to build that and work in the intersection of the two. We met Daimler Trucks through a hackathon here at Capital Factory in Austin over a year ago. And we've been working with them for now over a year, collaborating with them, building applications, prototyping approaches, and finding ways to improve their workflow and their supplier and downstream network. So it's been an incredible opportunity to have those types of intersections. At YGC, we've also built something we're calling our executive council, where we have leaders from over 100 enterprises meeting with us nearly monthly to discuss topics, transition, and change for their industries, for their companies, and provide insights. So it's really cool when someone from Walmart has an idea or something they're doing, and then it's picked up by something completely different, a giant construction company or a large drug company, and they're able to share those ideas and concepts because we all need to adapt. We had Reagan Pugh this morning talk about how he's adapted his business and his practice during COVID. And he said, I just popped into every event I could, I listened to every facilitator, and I just stole all the great ideas and all the great tools. And I tried them out as my own and found the ones that stuck. And we need that adaptive behavior right now. So it's really important to look at that and consider how to approach that and how to pull that together. And Austin's been a great town for YGC. We found some incredible board members, some great investors, wonderful employees. We're currently hiring some MBA students to come in and tackle some of our projects. And so, I've been really grateful to be in Austin and contribute to the startup ecosystem because it's done so much for me and so much for my companies and teams. And so today, as we go into this afternoon, I'll be introducing our first speaker here in a moment. But one of the things we also noticed from work from home is to take breaks. So y'all have been listening to me here and getting this intro. But I do want to encourage you to take a quick break. We're going to stop at the very top of the hour, and I'll be introducing the first session with Lewin. Lewin Payne is an incredible researcher. I got to meet her a couple weeks ago, and I'm excited to have her share her comments. And I'll be sharing more of her bio and background and introducing her session after the break. So we'll break now for the next 5 minutes, and we'll rejoin here at the top of the hour.